We'll now have a moment of silent prayer or meditation. May we be seated? Thank you very much, honorable members. Firstly, I would like to inform members that we have a new chief whip of the Umkhonto weSizwe Party, Honorable Mzwanele J. Manyi. Order, honorable members. Order. Order. Honorable members. Honorable members. Ministers, order. Honorable members, today we are having answers to the questions posed to the President by members. I would just like to indicate to members that we have been requested by the Presidency to have the auto cues that are here. As you know, that the President has been having the problem with his eyes, so I granted the permission. I just thought I needed to inform members. Thank you. Honorable members, the only item on the order paper is questions addressed to the President. There are 4 supplementary questions on each question. Parties have given an indication of which questions their members wish to pose a supplementary question to. Adequate notice was given to parties for this purpose. This was done to facilitate participation of members who are connecting to the sitting through the virtual platform. The members who will pose supplementary questions will be recognized by the presiding officer. In allocating opportunities for supplementary questions, the principle of fairness, among others, has been applied. Those to ask a supplementary question through the virtual platform is unable to do so due to technological difficulties, the party whip or duty whip will be allowed to ask the question on behalf of their member or any member allocated by the party concerned. When all the supplementary questions have been answered by the President, we will proceed to the next question on the question paper. Honorable members, this morning we took note of the concerns raised by members that particularly when we're on virtual and even beyond virtual, at times it's not easy to know what was the original question that has been asked to the President. People just see the President answering. Now they don't know what was the question posed, Mr. President, because they don't have the order paper that we have. So we've devised some means temporarily that I will read what was the question to you, so that even those that are at home, they will know what was the question that was posed. The first question has been asked by the Honorable MJ Maswangani, and the first question is about developing the Sovereign Wealth Fund and its benefits for the majority of the people of the Republic. Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, sovereign wealth funds are by their nature often used by many countries around the world to harness national resources for economic as well as for social development. They are often used to preserve and to grow a country's wealth for the benefit of future generations, In a document that was published in December of 2021 by the National Treasury, they described some of the features of a sovereign wealth fund. And they say that such a fund is often a state-owned company that would accumulate resources for capital investment through a dedicated revenue instrument or instruments. It would then invest these resources in different asset classes. Countries with sovereign wealth funds, and there are quite a number of them around the world, often maintain surpluses in their current accounts and balance sheets or balances. This provides the fiscal space to establish a sovereign wealth fund. At present, with our current fiscal position, with substantial current account and budget deficits, it is currently not the most opportune and favorable time for us to establish a sovereign wealth fund. However, there are a number of options that are under consideration. Funding for service delivery remains under pressure for us. Additional resources are required to improve the recruitment of key personnel such as police and teachers. We also need to increase investment in the maintenance of basic service maintenance, or infrastructure rather. In light of these realities, the most appropriate policy path for us is to use any additional resources at this moment to reduce the debt burden that our country carries and improve the delivery of services. Several countries use revenue from the exploitation of their natural resources to establish and sustain sovereign wealth funds. In our country, however, the public revenues or royalties that we derive from mineral resources have historically not been very reliable, or have they been very consistent. We have therefore suggested that one of the possible routes towards the establishment of a sovereign wealth fund is through the reform and consolidation of state-owned enterprises. This is the route that a number of countries have used, and the one example that I got to know of was Singapore through Temasek, Dubai, or the UAE through their Investment Dubai Fund. We are working to implement a new centralized ownership model for our state-owned enterprises. As I said in the opening of Parliament, the establishment of a state-owned enterprise holding company will give us greater capacity to build a sovereign wealth fund. This has been done successfully by other countries whose sovereign wealth funds have built up capital from the high performance of the state-owned enterprises rather than from the fiscus. While the conditions do not currently exist to establish the immediate establishment of a sovereign wealth fund, this is an objective to which we should continue to work. Such a fund could help to ensure that the national wealth of our country is effectively used to support economic and social development for years to come. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Masaunganye.
No, Cancer Speaker. Muchaviseki President. Ekubona ku tiko ra Afrika-Dzonga ri na swicelwa swo tala, mineral resources. Tanihiloko murile. na ku vona ku matiko man'wani ma tirhisa swicelwa leswi ku endla sovereign wealth fund. A mi voni ku swi fanerile tanihi tiko leri nga fuma hi swicelwa ku hi tirhisa swona ku endla sovereign fund, wealth fund. Una case study nje president va nga dzi sedza uri the mineral resources dzi shumisiwe. Ri a understanda uri muvhuso a una tshelede. Mara why ri sa shumisi wealth hei ri nayo ya the mineral resources u ita sovereign wealth fund. Ndo livhuwa mulangadzuli.
Thank you, Honorable President.
Tatani Maswangai na khensa swinene hi xivutiso xexo. Leswi swa timayini ta hina, timayini to tala laha ti le mavokweni a ti-private investors. Kusukela mining isungula laha a South Africa, timayini to tala a ti zange ti va timayini ta hulumeni wa hina. Hulumeni wa hina u kuma mali ka timayini leti loko u endla tax ka tona, loko u tlhe u kuma ti-royalties. Ti-royalties i tax leyin'wani ya special leyi hakelwaku hi timayini leti. Loko yi hlanganisa hinkwayo ku va na mali leyi nga kota ku ri yes i aka sovereign wealth fund. Ka matiko man'wani vona va endle ku ri timayini ta vona ti va ta vona. Va endle swilo leswi swi vitaniwaku ku ri timayini hinkwato ti va ta vona. Hina laha a hi sungulangi tani. Hi sungule loko mining i sungula hi 1867, ku sunguliwe hi ndlela yaleyo ku ri timayini ti owniwa hi ti-investors. And government, hulumeni wa hina, wona u kuma ti-tax leti. Ka ti-royalty leti hi ti kumaka, hi to a hi nga kota ku ri hi ti tirhisa. Now, sometimes there are mining booms, as they call them, commodity booms, where mining companies do earn quite a lot of money, and the taxation thereof is quite substantial. But so are the royalties. And the royalties are what could be used to also accumulate the sovereign wealth fund. Now, the taxation goes obviously to the revenue fund, which then helps to fund, together with other taxes that either we pay as individuals and companies pay, to fund everything that the people of South Africa need. By agglomerating various state-owned enterprises that are obviously going to start working better as we move on and make quite a lot of profit, we argue that that gives us the platform and the foundation to build a sovereign wealth fund. Rather than take money from the fiscus, money that is always utilized to fund a whole range of initiatives that government embarks upon, it would be good to set aside money, some of which could come from royalties, and some of which could come from the profits that these companies make. That would then help to build a sovereign wealth fund. Other countries have used it successfully. Even where mining companies, for instance, are owned by private individuals or resources, they have been able to utilize those earnings, and they can be categorized into many categories, if you like, and those can then be utilized to build a sovereign wealth fund. We are committed to create a sovereign wealth fund, and we believe that the architecture that we're putting together now will be able to assist us in building a sovereign wealth fund. And this we will be doing for future generations, because it takes quite a while to build a facility like a sovereign wealth fund. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable W.R. Alexander.
Thank you very much. While the DA acknowledges that there may be some benefits to a sovereign wealth fund, we have serious concerns about implementation and management, especially when the proven track record of mismanagement and corruption within state-owned enterprises. The potential for a sovereign wealth fund to become a burden to the already stretched taxpayer, or possibilities that the government might divert resources from critical programs such as infrastructure, is deeply troubling. Mr. President, given the concerns raised around the potential mismanagement on the country's already stretched financial challenges, could you please elaborate on the potential funding resources of the Sovereign Wealth Fund? How would government plan to fund such an initiative in the light of South Africa's current high levels of national debt and an already strained fiscus?
Honorable President.
If we put, Honorable Speaker, thank you. If we put together an architecture that is well structured, we would argue that you do not need to utilize money from the fiscus to create your sovereign wealth fund. So therefore, the concern that you have that there would be a tax burden on taxpayers to create a sovereign wealth fund would not apply. Because as I said in my opening reply, what you would do is to use the proceeds that would come from the assets that the government holds or the state owns as it flows through dividends and other processes. In that way, you then begin to aggregate a sovereign wealth fund. Now, we do have what you could argue is a fund, a big fund, and it is the biggest on the continent, the Public Investment Commission. That, in a way, is similar to what you could say a sovereign wealth fund. And to the extent that it is a sovereign wealth fund, it is owned by pensioners, the people who work for government. And that has gone way beyond 7 trillion, and it is the largest on our continent. To my recollection, the concern that you have about money being wasted and being corrupted, there hasn't been such. It is well run, and it invests its money very, very effectively in bonds, in equities, and it also supports economic development by funding a number of business development projects. So that is well managed. Now, what we would seek to do is from the proceeds of state-owned enterprises, we would then build a sovereign wealth fund. And I'd like to believe that with good corporate governance processes, the money should be well managed and akin to what we have been doing through the PIC up to now. So I don't really see much of a difference. What would the money be used for? The money would be used for, yes, economic development. Sovereign wealth funds are often used for that. And in some cases, they even declare dividends to the state, to National Treasury, so that National Treasury can then carry on with its other normal funding activities. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable WM3.
Thank you, Speaker. Mr. President, it is well known that a sovereign wealth fund has the ability to improve the well-being and the standard of living of the citizens in the country which develops such a fund. Some 12 African countries rather, have already established a sovereign wealth fund which put South Africa in a position behind our African counterparts. South Africa is well endowed with natural mineral resources, and this should be used not only to grow our economy, it should also be used to protect our citizens from both endogenous and exogenous shocks, financial shocks to our economy. Now, Mr. President, with South Africa facing a deficit on our national budget, a debt to GDP of over 74%, and as well some failures in implementing what you would call for the structural reform that our economy needs, how do you intend to overcome these impediments and others which serves as deterrents to a sovereign wealth fund?
Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. As I said, the establishment of a sovereign wealth fund is a process. And I think we have gone now beyond talking about our wish and our desire to establish a sovereign wealth fund. It is now generally accepted that, like other countries, we should have a sovereign wealth fund. And I was giving the example of the sovereign wealth pension fund that we have created over time, over a number of years, which is the PIC. But that one is owned by the pensioners, people who work for the state. We now want to create a sovereign wealth fund which will be owned by all the people of South Africa. Now, as I said, one of the best ways, and right now it is the most efficacious way to set up the sovereign wealth fund is through having a state-owned enterprise holding company, which will then be able to draw dividends from its well-operating state-owned entities. A number of countries have done so. And Dubai Investment Fund is one of those. And indeed, the Singapore one and many other countries are able to draw dividends from those well-operating companies that operate in good industries and that make money. And the money then goes into the sovereign wealth fund. Now, yes, we have a deficit. We have a debt burden. And obviously that has to be funded through the taxation process that's underway or borrowings. Now, the sovereign wealth fund will be funded through dividends that will flow from our state-owned enterprises. Right now, many of our state-owned enterprises are in the doldrums. We accept that. And processes are underway to reposition them. And when they are repositioned, and this will take time, we will then be able to draw dividends from those. And the dividends will then flow into the sovereign wealth fund and start building it up. And it will then have a developmental approach to assist in developing our economy. So that is the broad architecture. And that's why I say we've now gone beyond desire and wish. We are now getting into building the nuts and bolts of how this sovereign wealth fund could operate. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The last supplementary question will be asked by Honorable T.L. Magau.
I'm on the virtual platform, Honorable Speaker.
Yes, ma'am. You can go ahead.
Can I go ahead?
You can go ahead
Ms.
and ask the question.
Oh, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Mr. President, the ATM family believes that any economic initiative undertaken by the government must prioritize the upliftment of the poor and the dispossessed who have long been excluded from the economic benefits of our nation wealth. In light of this, how will government ensure that establishment and the operation of the sovereign wealth fund directly confronts and reduces the stark economic inequalities in our society? What specific measures will be put in place to guarantee that the benefits of this fund are equitably shared among the most vulnerable and marginalized members of our communities? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The answer to that question is really the heart of the matter. Will the Sovereign Wealth Fund benefit the majority of the people of South Africa? And the answer is yes. Sovereign wealth funds are meant to achieve precisely that purpose, and they should be seen as contributors to economic development. They should also be seen as vehicles through which the state can invest money that is in surplus, that it can utilize for various economic projects. It could be specific economic sectors that it can focus on, and it could also be funding or surplus money that it utilizes to invest in other countries, in other companies, as well as a number of such sovereign wealth funds now today do. Singapore, Temasek is one of those. The Dubai Investment Fund is one of those, and indeed many others. They utilize the firepower that they have through the money that resides or held by the Sovereign Wealth Fund to foster economic development. And we would see this as another important arm that can enhance the economic development of our country. So, Sovereign Wealth Fund, in my view, Honorable Speaker, is the way to go. And we now have a better architectural opportunity to be able to do so, rather than just to continue just talking about it without knowing exactly how it will source money, how it will be structured. I guess I should add that if we ever get to a point where we have a huge budget surplus, where our debt has evaporated or has been extinguished, then you will have sufficient firepower to even divert some of the money to a sovereign wealth fund. We are many, many years away from that. We need to deal from the revenues that we get from either our companies or personal income tax and many other sources of tax. We need to deal with our existential expenditure challenges, as well as servicing our debt. So setting up a sovereign wealth fund is then a project we work on as we improve our state-owned enterprises. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. The second question has been asked by Honorable G. Makalakis, and the question is about private sector investment into crumbling ports, railways, and infrastructure. The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, for our economy to grow, we need an efficient and well-functioning economy, but more particularly a well-functioning logistics system. It is very important, if the goods we produce are to be globally competitive, for us to be able, as we produce our goods, to be able to know that they have a channel through which they will travel to our ports, to our places of forward destination. This is why we are focused on the logistics sector as part of our broader agenda for economic reform. For many years, our rail system and ports have suffered from underinvestment, particularly in infrastructure, in equipment, and in the maintenance of that equipment as well. This has contributed to deteriorating performance of our economy. This trend was exacerbated during the state capture period. Funds were diverted away from pressing infrastructure needs. The poor condition of our rail network and the inefficient operation of our port terminals now represent what I would call a binding constraint on economic growth and job creation. This has implications for key sectors of our economy, such as mining, agriculture, and manufacturing as well. We are urgently working to restore our logistics system and to restore it to world-class standards. A number of our port outlets used to be amongst the best in the world, but they have deteriorated over time. As a result of Transnet's limited balance sheet and our constrained fiscal resources, we need to mobilize capital for this from the private sector, where the money is. During the 6th administration, Operation Vulindlela, together with the Department of Transport, commissioned research on the opportunities for private sector participation in the logistics sector. This research found that there is significant appetite for private sector investment in ports and rails. It also found that a clear and consistent legal and regulatory framework is needed to unlock this investment. It requires a level playing field for private operators. This work itself informed the development of the Freight Logistics Roadmap and the private sector participation framework for the rail sector. And the roadmap was developed through consultation of the various key players in that sector, ranging from business, even labor, and government. Significant progress has already been made in implementing the Freight Logistics Roadmap, which was also approved by Cabinet in December 2023. Transnet has published a draft network statement for the rail system. This will enable private rail operators to access the network for the first time. Transnet is undergoing a fundamental restructuring process to separate infrastructure from operations. This is through the establishment of the Rail Infrastructure Manager and the National Ports Authority as independent subsidiaries of Transnet. Private sector participation is being introduced also in container terminals. This is starting with an equity partnership between Transnet and an international terminal operator for the Durban Pier 2 container terminal. A dedicated private sector participation unit has already been established by the Department of Transport to identify and develop further opportunities for private investment. These opportunities would be realized through concessions, joint ventures, as well as other models. At the same time, we made it clear that the port and rail infrastructure will remain in public ownership, even as competition is introduced in the operations. We are therefore very clear that this is not a process of privatization, it is a process of concessioning, enabling those with money, which currently our Transnet balance sheet cannot support, to bring their money in and to invest to make our ports and our container terminals much more efficient. We are confident that through these efforts and by implementing the Freight Logistics Roadmap, we will enable massive new investment in our ports and our rail system. This will unlock economic growth and create jobs. I saw how a number of companies, particularly one company that made investment commitment at the investment conference the previous year and last year, how they have already invested well over 500 million rand. I was able to go to the port of Durban and to see the container terminal that they had already built, which is now working very efficiently. And the container terminal works in a way where the producers of goods bring in their products and they are contained at the port, and thereafter this container manager is then able to allocate shipment times and all that. And all that has required quite a lot of money, but in the end they rent the space from Transnet, and Transnet is able to continue its other important work of the reforms they have embarked upon. So it creates a mutually beneficial partnership between a state-owned entity and the private sector, which in the end increases efficiency and will in time take our ports back to the global standards that they used to occupy. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable G. Michalakis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, noting that logistics such as ports and freight rail are causing major economic issues that cost the economy billions of rands a day and further prevents the creation of new jobs, will you, Mr. President, commit to a timeline for the implementation of structural reforms in freight rail, ports and logistics? And if not, why not? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable President.
Yes, the answer is yes. This is a process that we've committed ourselves to introduce and also to implement those reforms. If we do not implement the reforms that we have set out, then we're actually relegating to a no growth or low growth dispensation of our economy. So this is a must do. Our ports, as you will have seen in a report that was published last year, have really declined, have gone right to the bottom. And they used to belong amongst the better ones in the world and certainly the best on our continent. So those reforms must be embarked upon. Yes, they are time-based type of reforms, but one is not able to put a finger on exactly when each of the reforms will happen, but they are happening as we move on. And it is also a question of mobilizing the financial resources that are required, but more importantly, of getting the equipment. Quite a bit of the equipment that we have in our ports is archaic. Other ports are using really fantastic modern-day equipment, technologically well-driven and using G5 and many other, and now they are moving to AI. So we need to step up and move in that direction as well, so that we are then able to handle goods that either arrive or goods that we are able to export. And in the process of all that, jobs are created. Many more jobs, not only at the point of export or point of import, they are created in the back end where those goods are made. Because once we improve our logistics, a market is created and more goods are then able to be made as entrepreneurs and businesses have a sense that we've got a channel that works. Right now, with the decline of our rail capacity, we used to export, for instance, 82 million tons of coal. We've now gone down through our Richards Bay coal terminal. We've gone down to 40, 50 million tons. Now, it's the improvements that we have to make on our rail to enable locomotives to come back and be able to transport. So the miners mine the coal, mine the iron ore, and mine all these things. They lie fallow in their yards because there's no way that they can be transported efficiently and on time. So the reforms that we have embarked upon are meant to correct all this and to make sure that our logistics system works better and we are able to export and indeed to import goods as much as we possibly can. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable S.T. Sulamlela.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Mr. President, investments by both private and public sector in our rail and ports to improve efficiency is crucial for economic growth, not only in our country, but also in the continent. Now, my question is, Mr. President, how will these investments create a gateway and integrate African markets to boost a well-integrated network of ports and logistic infrastructure to achieve economic growth here at home and in the continent? Thank you.
Honorable President.
The reforms that we have embarked upon are the type of reforms that will not only open up the gateway that we are, but will enhance it, and it will also have a beneficial impact on other countries on the continent, on the subcontinent, that is our region, as well as on the continent as a whole. We continue to be recognized as the gateway into Africa because we are the most industrialized country on the continent, and we've got good infrastructure that has over the years really run into disrepair. So the reforms we have embarked upon are aimed at revamping that infrastructure. We have been, as a country, chosen by the African Union to be the champion of infrastructure. And that is the position we occupy at the AU level. And living up to that position means that we should be the repository of coming up with the ideas of how infrastructure, particularly logistics, on our continent and in our region can be improved. Many countries rely on South Africa to have or to continue having the best infrastructure. And countries as far afield as the Great Lakes, as far afield as the DRC, still rely on our own logistics capacity. So therefore, we need to ensure that these reforms continue to benefit us, but also benefit other countries as they are very, very reliant on us as well. So in the end, what we do here is not only beneficial for us, but it is also beneficial for other countries in our region and indeed on the continent as well. And we will continue, and it is for that reason that we should continue with those reforms, because for us it's almost do reform or you die. And if we don't reform, it basically means we are really imposing a death sentence on our own economy. And that is a route that we should never take. We should only take the route that will enhance the growth of our economy and lead to the creation of jobs, which is precisely what we are focusing on. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Honorable O.M. Maudre.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speakers, there's this false and misconstrued idea that for state-owned entities to function optimally, effectively, and efficiently, you need private sector participation or involvement. And that idea has been debunked by the recent experiences with ESCOM, where we come from heavy load shedding, which was as a result of your deployment of a useless minister who had no clue what ESCOM is all about, including the management team that was there. We've seen now with the new minister and the engineers who are there in the form of the board chairperson and the CEO, that it has turned around ESCOM. We now no longer talk about load shedding. So what makes you think that the private sector is actually the answer? You correctly said earlier on that Transnet used to transport 82 million tons of coal which has now dropped to 14 million tons. But that's as a result of management. So why are you not bringing competent, experienced, well-qualified management teams to revitalize our ports and our railways without you handing over our assets to to private sector, which is basically you are saying we need wide supervision for government to operate optimally. Thank you.
Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I'd like to make it clear once again that the process of the reforms we have embarked upon is not about handing over state assets in terms of ownership. It is cooperating with the private sector where money resides. The private sector has money. No. Right now, for instance, Transnet's balance sheet is constrained. We had a situation where Eskom, and still have a situation where Eskom has a negative balance sheet. And the Treasury has had to bail out Eskom for something like 450 billion rand. Now, that's a burden. That's a burden that the people of South Africa will continue to carry over the next few years, where money that should be utilized quite effectively to improve education, to ensure that our health facilities are better, is then diverted to put into a state-owned enterprise. And what we are arguing is that we must lessen the dependence of our state-owned enterprises, and where we can cooperate with the private sector, and where they can put their money into a state asset, they should do so. And I'll give you a very good example. The N3, which is like the real artery of our economy, was built through a partnership, a private partnership with the private sector. They helped us build that road. And their concession will soon be coming to an end, and the entire road, that is the N3, will then be handed over to government. Now, that's a smart partnership. And what we are saying is that develop smart partnerships. What we would have had to do, the fiscus would have had to lay out quite a lot of billions of rands to build the N3. And the private sector was ready to come. Now, I think last year I did say that I went to Beitbridge. And I went to the Zimbabwe side of Beitbridge, having been to our side of Beitbridge. Our side of Beitbridge is quite a sad situation to look at. When President Mnangagwa took me to their side of Beitbridge, I found that they had built one of the top class facilities. And I asked him, how did you do this? He said, no, President. All we did, we gave a concession to the private sector. They've built this facility for us. And we are going to take ownership of this facility. In 15 years, it will be ours. And they have built a world-class facility. Now, that is being smart. That is being smart by utilizing other people's money.
Order, honorable members.
Now, on our side, so you know, so that as you respond in the way you do, so you know, on our side, we have now decided that we are going to have public-private partnerships to improve our own entry points, be it in Beitbridge, be it in Libombo, and all over.
Order, honorable members, you have asked the question, it's been answered. You may not like the answer because it's a point of debate. Let's allow the president to finish his answer. Order.
Honorable
You
Speaker.
can guide him later, not now. Order.
Honorable Speaker, thank you.
Thank you.
It adds quite a lot of excitement, though, because it enables people to think through issues. Because when you have to deal with the reality of our own situation, where we've had quite a bit of underdevelopment, and where we can say we will work with those who have the resources, and in the end up with, yes, the most fantastic border control situation that I saw on the Zimbabwe side, and which is already earning the money because the flow of goods and people through that facility is much more enhanced, it's much more modern, and that's precisely where we need to go. To modernize our own infrastructure, and we do need to utilize the finance, the capital that we can get from other players, be it development funding institutions, be it sovereign wealth funds. That is where we can get the support, and through private-public partnerships that work for the benefit of all. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, President. Honorable S.L. Ngobo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable President, in 2023, a surge of 1,500 to 1,600 trucks daily transporting commodities to the port of Richards Bay caused extensive infrastructure damage and strained the Umhlatuze municipality's budget. This crisis underscores the state's failure to maintain the rail network, forcing reliance on overburdened roadways. Despite high-level government intervention, the port's capacity remains inadequate. Question: what has government done to repair and extensively safeguard the rail network, my emphasis, Mr. President, to protect it from obvious and deliberate tampering to benefit the trucking industry? Thank you very much, Speaker.
Siyabonga Mapholoba, Mongameli.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. It is generally known that as our rail system has deteriorated, it has led to the increase of trucks on our road. And our road network is now under enormous pressure from trucking as the trucks have increased, ferrying goods up and down from the coast to inland and from inland to the coast. They damage our roads. And this was so ably articulated by Premier of the Northern Cape, who said that their road network continues to be damaged by trucks from the mines right to the port, in a way where the road just continues to deteriorate year in and year out. And that is the challenge that we are facing. And the efforts that we have embarked upon of reforms are aimed at precisely improving our road network, our rail network rather, and also improving security on that network, because there have been security lapses that have led to vandalization, the uprooting of rail lines, and some of those have been with the participation of some well-established companies that have, through the scrap businesses that they embark upon, have just been peeling off our rail lines and utilizing them for scrap steel. Now, that requires enhanced security, which our reforms are also dealing with, because that's part of the roadmap that we are working on. Now, with the cooperation of all key role players, we are finding that a number of corridors are now being opened, they are being restored, and this applies to not only for goods, but also for passengers, including the PRASA corridors are being improved as security is enhanced, as well as the security on our important rail arteries between Mpumalanga, Gauteng, and also in the Northern Cape right through to the coast. So those are being enhanced and also now beginning to work more effectively on the rail line from Gauteng right through to the Eastern Cape. So that is a project that is underway, and it is what we want to see as a great improvement as we go on with our logistics improvement through the reforms that we have embarked upon. So in time, and soon it should be, even the issues that honorable member is complaining about through Mhlatuzi and all that will be handled and will be restored to a position where they were, where goods in our country should now be transported through rail rather than through roads. And of course, the road users, the trucking industry has seen a gap and an opportunity which they have taken up, but it is also damaging the roads, and therefore we need to ensure that there's a good balance, and the balance should be more tilted towards utilizing our rail rather than our road. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable President. Before we proceed, the Honourable Reddy's hand is raised on the platform. Honourable Reddy.
Madam Deputy Speaker, will the President take a question?
Honourable Reddy, in terms of the rules, members, order members, I will deal with this matter. Honourable Reddy, members, order. Members, order. I cannot reply to the Honourable Reddy. Honourable Minister. Honourable Ministers on my right-hand side, could you please calm down? Mr. President, please take your seat. I would like to respond to the Honourable Reddy. I do know that you are a new member, and in terms of the rules, we do not allow questions in or on the time of questions. You had the opportunity to submit questions in writing. So I would also request your newly appointed Chief Whip to guide you in terms of the rules of Parliament. Thank you. Honourable members, we now proceed. Could I please have order from this side of the House? We are now proceeding to question 3. Question 3 has been asked by the Leader of the Opposition. The question is about the promotion of African unity, self-determination and alignment of the government's foreign policy interests. The President.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Honorable members, Africa stands at the center of our foreign policy. We are firmly committed to strengthening the African Union, SADC, as well as an instrument or as instruments of peace, stability, integration, and development in our region as well as on our continent. Our country plays a leading role on several continental platforms and issues. We are, for example, the chair of the Presidential Infrastructure Champion Initiative, as I said. We are currently the AU champion on pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response. South Africa has been working closely with other countries towards the full implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, This is set to eliminate trade barriers and to boost intra-African trade and to advance prosperity for all on our continent. And we continue to work within the African Union to end several ongoing conflicts on our continent and to restore constitutional and democratic government to countries that have recently experienced coups. We are currently involved in supporting the people of Mozambique, the people of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, South Sudan, and other countries to enhance and to ensure that there is peace and stability on our continent. As the Union Chair in 2020, South Africa led the continental response to the COVID-19 pandemic. This involved overseeing a continent-wide strategy, setting up of innovative online platforms to access essential medical supplies, mobilizing the international community to address issues such as debts of African countries, and also to secure vaccines. South Africa has consistently championed the African agenda on the world stage. Our country successfully advocated for the inclusion of the African Union as a fully fledged member of the G20. We have indicated that we will place the interests of the African continent prominently on the agenda of our G20 presidency next year. South Africa has also stressed the value of the BRICS alliance to advancing Africa's developmental agenda. And as chair of BRICS last year, our country invited representatives from other African countries to attend the summit that was held in Johannesburg. 46 African countries attended, including 20 heads of states and government. So we continue as a country to pursue an independent foreign policy. Through our foreign policy, we aim to promote our own national interest, which is based on the protection and promotion of our national sovereignty and our constitutional order. The key pillars of our foreign policy include the promotion of human rights, peace and stability, and the strengthening of trade and investment ties with other countries. Since the advent of democracy, South Africa has taken a position of non-alignment as we deal with global matters. This means that we have chosen not to align ourselves with any of the major global powers or blocs. Instead, our country strives to work with all countries for global peace and development. We are guided by our own values and principles, and we are firmly committed to advancing the development and prosperity of the continent that we call home. I thank you.
The first supplementary question will be asked by the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Mr. President, the question is this: what is your administration doing to support the implementation of the ruling of the International Court of Justice in respect of the Israeli-Palestinian issue, particularly in the light of the ongoing brutality in the area?
The Honourable President.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. As the Honourable Member knows, we have continued to take action at the International Court of Justice, Having initiated the action last year, we've continued to approach that court with further pleas and submissions to the court to make further rulings and to tighten up what they ruled in our favor last year. And in doing so, we've been fortunate to be joined by a number of other countries that have voiced and articulated their support for the case that South Africa initiated. We are now in the process of preparing almost a 500-page case which will be presented to the court, where we will be taking steps to prove that what we had approached the court on last year is the reality that Palestinians are living under, where we will be submitting not only video proof, photographic proof, but also great witness to our assertion that a genocide is unfolding and underway in Gaza. And all this, as the honorable member would know, is being done to not only support the people of Palestine, but to ensure that we live up to our own values and principles of respect for human rights and for justice, but also to continue arguing that the only solution that there can be for the horror that is unfolding in Palestine is when Palestinians will be granted the opportunity to have their own independent state and have self-determination, and to have a state of Palestine installed and established where they will also live side by side with the state of Israel. Now, all these matters are various initiatives that we continue to take, including the very matters that some of the members are shouting about now. These are matters that, as the government, we are in the process of dealing with. When we started this court case, we were told that the initiative we've taken is completely irrelevant, it amounted to nothing, and when the court, the International Court of Justice, ruled in our favor, it shut all those detractors up. And we continue in our resolve to proceed with this case because it is quite a historic case which demonstrates the empathy and the compassion of the people of South Africa towards the people of Palestine. And this we will continue. In the next few weeks, we will be submitting the real substance of our case, which our lawyers have been working on. And you might recall, and I continue to call you Honorable Judge, you will recall that we did set up a team that is composed of some of the best brains in the legal field, an international team that is working on these matters. So we are confident that we have a solid case to prove that genocide has happened and continues to happen in Palestine. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Kwankwa.
Comrade President, thank you very much. The deadly clashes that have been raging for years in South Kivu and North Kivu provinces of the eastern DRC have forced thousands of civilians to flee their homes and dozens have been killed. There are fears that more regional towns might fall to the advancing M23. President, the question is this: whether in line with aspiration number 4 of Agenda 2063 of building a peaceful and secure Africa, South Africa has considered pushing for an AU-facilitated DRC Peace Summit, which would combine the Luanda and Nairobi processes that are currently underway into one, as a way of finding a lasting solution to the conflict and resolving the diplomatic crisis between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Thank you, sir.
The Honourable President,
Thank you.
yes, proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Yes, our country remains committed to ensuring that there is a peaceful outcome to the conflict that is raging in the Eastern DRC. 2 weeks ago, I traveled to Angola to meet President Lorenzo, who brokered a ceasefire between the DRC and Rwanda. And in the course of our discussions, we both confirmed that the only way to resolve that conflict is through a peaceful negotiation that will result in a permanent ceasefire. We were grateful that the two countries have agreed to cease the fire. I'm informed that that ceasefire continues to hold, and there are preparations underway to hold a process that will combine both the Nairobi and the Luanda process in a way that we will be able to forge a permanent peace. Now, South Africa, as you well know, continues to be invested in this whole process of finding a peaceful solution. We are part of the SADC mission, SAMI-DRC, that is located in the DRC with the specific purpose of ensuring that the fighting comes to an end and that there is peace in that part of the DRC. Now, we are looking forward to the various initiatives that are underway to ensure that, yes, the fighting stops. The good thing is that the need for peace has now been embraced. The other good thing is that there has been embraced that indeed there needs to be a get-together by the belligerent forces to get together to forge a peaceful settlement. We have long concluded that there is no way that the conflict in the DRC can be resolved through continued armed conflict. It can only be resolved through a peaceful solution. And that is precisely what we are working on, both diplomatically, politically, and in other ways, engaging the various parties that are there. Earlier, I had traveled to Rwanda when they commemorated 30 years of the genocide that happened there. And in the course of that visit, I had extensive discussions with President Kagame, and the desire for peace was clearly expressed during our discussions. And thereafter, I also saw President Museveni, and the same was articulated. So we now have a rising consensus that we need to resolve that conflict through peace. The peace that needs to be installed will bring an end to the nightmare that ordinary people are suffering on the ground. And South Africa will continue to play a key role, as we have always done so since the time when President Mandela was president. We have sought to broker peace, and we will continue to do precisely that. And we'll be working through the various organizations or structures of the AU itself, its Peace and Security Commission, as well as the SADC, and where President Lorenzo is also leading the Luanda process. So we will continue being well connected and engaged with that whole process. Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Honourable Manyi, you raised your hand. I will now recognize you.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, towards the end of last year, there was a spirited attempt, or rather a spirited effort to shape the rules of this House and in order to improve decorum and all of that, so that we don't have a situation where when the president is addressing, then there's a whole flurry of point of orders and all of that. Now, if you have a situation where, despite those rules to try and maintain order in this House, you then have a president that was part of an impeachment process that now continues to mock our party leader here in Parliament.
Honorable Mani, that
We have a
is,
problem. The president
that is
cannot
a question
continue-
of debate. It is
The
not
president-
a point of order.
The president cannot continue to keep mocking our party leader as a judge when he knows that they participated in a process to unfairly impeach him. Now he impeaches him on the one side and he mocks him again.
Honorable
That
Mani.
cannot be allowed.
Honorable Mani,
Yeah.
that is not a point
You
of
are
order
trying to
and it
address-
is dismissed. We will now proceed. Honorable Dlakude. Mr. President, we still have another point. Honorable Dlakude.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. The order on the order paper is questions to the President. It doesn't allow anyone to make statements other than the follow-up questions. So if the Honorable Mani had something to say against the President, something to say, he must bring in the substantive motion to this House. Thank you very much.
You are quite correct. That is the process, Honorable Mani. If you do have a point to be made, it is a substantive motion, but in any case, I have dismissed that point. We will now proceed with the third supplementary question, and it will be asked by the Honorable Mani.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And Honorable President, firstly, I want to celebrate our stance as consistent since democratic history of our country on facilitating human rights in the continent. And I think we've taken a forthright and a strong position in this regard. What I am wanting to understand, Mr. President, is that beyond just proclaiming the statements, how do we reconcile our position in being able to meet with leaders such as Mr. Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, who faces some serious allegations on the basis of allegations of genocide in the early 2000s, and now continues to wage war in Sudan? Equally so, Mr. President, South Africans were well treated to information about the fact that ZANU-PF were looking to advise during the elections to the South African government. Now, Mr. President, given that...
Honorable Maimani, your time has expired, but you can complete your question in a sentence.
So my question is, how do we move from merely speaking about human rights to condemning acts in Zimbabwe and in
Order,
Sudan?
members. The President cannot hear the question. Mr. President.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I'd like to say to Honorable Manyi and indeed to Honorable Sope that if my reference to the title is offensive, I apologize and I withdraw. So it's not a matter that one should articulate if it is found to be offensive. And I guess maybe because of having been legally trained, when you see another person who's been legally trained, you have that tendency of wanting to ascribe certain titles to them. So I apologize and I withdraw. Coming to Honorable Malema's question. No.
Honourable members, Honourable President, I have to remind you it was the Honourable Maimani's question.
Wa bona kore. Ora ke le lemile la ka la o rata bjano le no bolela fela. Honorable Maimani's question about why one or we would continue to meet people like General Dagalo. As a country, we've often said that in order to foster peace, we should be willing to meet those who are involved in conflict situations. And that has been the practice that even my predecessors have been involved in, where we are, as we broker peace amongst belligerent parties, we are prepared and willing to meet with them so that we are able to understand precisely what drives them, and also so that they can understand where we come from as we advocate for peace. So we believe that we should not say, we will not meet this one and we will only meet this one. You may recall, Honorable Maimani, that we were, as South Africa, part of the African peace mission that went to both Ukraine and to Russia. And that meant we were willing to talk to both parties who are involved in the conflict, with a view of getting the two parties to meet so that they can have a peace process. You cannot make peace with just the one party that is involved in a conflict. You've got to be willing to meet with both parties, and that's precisely what we have done. You may or may not know that with regard to Sudan, we have met both parties. We have met both generals, both the generals who are involved in this conflict. We've met them, and we've communicated to them the need for peace. Both of them were aimed. Both came to South Africa, and I met them. And I would like to believe that as we engage with them and we talk to them, the positions that they may well have also begin to be tempered towards having a peaceful solution. So we don't subscribe to the notion that you should not meet this one because they are branded in a particular way. As a neutral party, non-aligned, we believe that it is best to make all efforts to ensure that there is peace in whatever conflict that there is. And that has stood us well. And whenever we do so, we are able to give notice to the other belligerent party so that they should never misunderstand our intentions. They should always understand that our objective is to ensure that there is peace in whatever conflict. And that has always been accepted. And you may recall as well that last year we did participate on the sidelines brokering the peace between the belligerent parties in Ethiopia. And they finally came here. And that we were able to do by talking to both parties and making sure that, yes, there is peace. Even in the conflict in the DRC, we are working to talk to all the parties that are involved. So it is important that as we foster peace, we should be seen as an honest broker. We should be seen as a peacemaker who is willing to bring belligerent parties together. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Sali.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Honourable President, please advise whether you are aspiring and ready to become Africa's brother Muammar Gaddafi, Robert Sobukwe, Steve Biko, and Chris Hani, who all had clear visions for a United States of Africa under the banner of Pan-Africanism. I thank you.
Honourable the President.
If one understands and follows the policy trajectory that we have taken on foreign matters, on our foreign policy, it is really rooted around promoting Pan-Africanism, where we have, as a country, embraced the Pan-Africanism approach, if you like, philosophy, and where we have sought to be pro-Africa in everything that we do. And at times, we've often sounded like we are the most vociferous country in promoting Africa. We often see ourselves as being African first and advocating African interest. And it is for that reason that even during the COVID crisis that the whole world faced, we were focused on Pan-Africanism. We were focused on calling on the world, firstly, to reduce the debt that African countries had, to cancel the debt that African countries had, and to have standstill agreements on the repayment of the debt that African countries had. And in that regard, we were less advocating for ourselves, but advocating more for Africa, African countries. And when it came, for instance, to PPEs, personal protective equipment, we were able to have a number of those items made ourselves here. But we advocated for our continent as a whole to have better access to PPEs. And when it came to vaccines, our approach was full-blown Pan-African. And we were advocating for the continent as a whole, to a point where at times we put the interests of our continent even ahead of our own interests, because we do believe that we are inherently African, and we need to promote the interests of the African continent. So in the end, whether we are judged as any of those that you referred to is a matter of those who will pass that judgment. But we know what we stand for. We stand for Africa, and we want to advance the interests of our continent. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Question number 4 has been asked by the Honourable D.D. Pule. The question is about expanding market access for small-scale and previously disadvantaged farmers. The Honourable the President.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. The concentration of ownership, production and market access in agriculture constrains the potential of our economy. It suppresses agricultural output and undermines growth and job creation. It also perpetuates the historical injustice of land dispossession. The Agriculture and Agro-Processing Master Plan is an important instrument to address this challenge. The Master Plan aims to build an agriculture and agro-processing sector that is inclusive, competitive, job-creating, sustainable, and that continues to grow. Pillar number 5 of the Master Plan specifically seeks to facilitate market expansion, improve market access, and promote trade. This will be achieved through, amongst other things, strengthening partnerships with established industry associations to ensure that small and medium enterprises can access existing networks that facilitate exports. The master plan itself aims to increase the participation of Black farmers in national fresh produce markets, It aims to ensure that the National Agricultural Marketing Council and the Agricultural Marketing Products Act facilitate market access for Black farmers. Government is working with the Perishable Products Export Control Board to assist small-scale and previously disadvantaged farmers in complying with food safety requirements. The ability of previously disadvantaged farmers to consistently supply the markets is also a result of low throughput. It is for this reason that the master plan has prioritized producer support as one of its critical pillars. This support includes financing and extension and advisory services. By 2030, the master plan aims to increase the share of Black producers in production of grains from 4% to 20%, in livestock from the current 32% to 40%, in fruits from the current 2% to 10%, and in vegetables from 15 to 29%. Given the extent of the challenge facing small producers, we welcome the provisional report of the Competition Commission's Fresh Produce Market Inquiry. We look forward to the publication of the final report and the recommendations that it will make for addressing market concentration in the agricultural sector. I thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
First supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Pule.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. President Nakenza, implementation of the Agricultural and Agro-Processing Master Plan will result in greater economic inclusion, job creation and food security. Xivutiso xa mina President i xi ri, xana presidency yi ta pfuneta njhani ka ku hlanganisa ka swiphemu hinkwaswo leswo hambanahambana swa master plan ku tiyisisa ku humelela eka sector leswi nge hi xilungu coordination of the different elements to ensure the success in the sector. Thank you very much, President. Councillor Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable the President.
Nakenza, Honourable Pule. The national fresh produce market has for the longest time been dominated by existing white privileged farmers, and we need to embark on a multiplicity of initiatives that will ensure that Black farmers, and particularly your small, medium farmers, do in the end have the opportunity. Firstly, they need to have throughput. They need to have throughput in terms of being able to produce more of the fresh produce, and they need land to be able to do so. And they also need assistance with the inputs that go into farming, such as fertilizer, such as the implements, and they also need financing in that regard, so that they are well financed, so that they become serious players in the sector. We also need to have the access to market opened up for them. Yes, the state can play a key role through its procurement processes, particularly when it comes to either feeding schemes that need to be properly streamlined to enable the procurement to happen. But when it gets to the market, those markets of fresh produce in the various key nodes of our country, they need to be, the small, medium farmers need to be properly empowered so that they are able to have better access. As they gain access and space at those markets, they should then be able to have their products being saleable, and they also need active empowerment process so that the chains that sell our fresh produce should be able to procure the produce from those small farmers. So it's a combination of initiatives that we need to embark upon to make sure that indeed in the end we reposition small, medium farmers. As one was, the main answer shows that we need substantial growth in the various categories. In the livestock category, great deal of progress has been made. We now need to move to the other categories. Grains, for instance, we're still at the lower level. And this is largely due to the fact that many black farmers do not have the land to be able to produce grains, which is the typical staple food of the majority of our people. They don't have the capacity to produce that in large numbers. So many initiatives are already underway, and we do believe that the various departments in government that are aimed at ensuring that we achieve these objectives will help. The Competition Commission report in terms of the sector inquiry has helped a great deal to fathom precisely what the problems are. And we're hoping that when they come out with their final report, we'll be able to have clear recommendations that will be able to take matters forward in the interest of ensuring that Black people play a key role in this sector as well. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Okamp.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable President, the expansion of growth and market access in the agricultural industry for upcoming farmers is very important. It will, however, not occur when one part of the industry is sacrificed to the benefit of another part of the same industry. It is of utmost importance that the much-needed growth in access to markets for previously disadvantaged small and emerging farmers must take place. It must, however, grow parallel to the growth in access to the markets that commercial farmers who employ millions of people experience. What assurances, Mr. President, can you therefore provide to farmers that the steps that will be taken for the necessary increase in the concentration of access to markets for previously disadvantaged small and emerging farmers will not influence the access to markets that commercial farmers currently have, but rather that the access to markets for both emerging and commercial farmers will grow simultaneously, and in so doing, transfer emerging
Your time
farmers
has
to
expired.
commercial farmers. Thank you, Honourable President.
May I continue? Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I think the operative word here should be opening up access to all. And that process, for instance, is already underway. And I give a very good example with the citrus industry. In the citrus industry, you've got the established farmers who are churning out quite a lot of citrus, but we've also got the emerging Black farmers who are also producing citrus. Now, as we advocate the opening up of the European market, we do so for both. We want to advance both, but we also want the existing farmers to give maximum support to the emerging farmers through the facilities that they have, for instance, pack houses. Emerging farmers don't have pack houses. There should be sharing of space and opportunity, for instance, in facilities or infrastructure facilities, such as pack houses, such as transportation as well. So if we can have both of them grabbing the opportunities that are given rise to, with the government obviously giving much more assistance to emerging farmers. And I think we need to be clear about that. The government will be biased towards assisting emerging farmers. And existing farmers must never think that this is being done at the expense of their continued success. So all must succeed at the same time, but with greater emphasis on government side to support those who were previously held back and who were previously not even allowed to play a key role. So I see both being given, yes, the opportunities to rise together, but our emphasis as government will always be on assisting Black farmers because they need much more support. And remembering, of course, that the existence of the more established white farmers was done with the great assistance of the previous apartheid government. It was the apartheid government that propped them up, that put them where they are today. So their own responsibility must be, we must support those that were previously prevented. We must also accept that government is going to assist those more so that all of us are then able to rise. And it's not a question of saying we want to suppress the one so that the other should go. We're saying all must be able to rise together. That is the approach of this government, because it is important that we should be able to have an economic system or sector in agriculture that promotes growth. But as we promote growth, the bias will always be towards those who were previously disadvantaged. Thank you very much.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Zibi.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Mr. President, there are many South Africans from rural communities, such as mine in the Eastern Cape, who have access to arable land, but zero access to piped water specific to where we farm crops and do stock farming. What measures is the government going to take to accelerate access to piped water, to stock and crop farming lands in rural areas, so that when these measures are taken to deconcentrate at the top, and when they are supported with modern farming methods, advice, and other equipment, they too can be part of the formal economy so that they can benefit from the deconcentration of the value chains. I thank you.
The Honourable the President.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Access to water, for starters, and access to piped water, even in the deep rural areas, is a very important objective that we have. And remembering that the current more commercial agriculture setup that we have in our country really grew because there was a great deal of support to your commercial farmers for channeling water for irrigation purposes to the places where they do their own trade or where they farm. So therefore, as we support emerging farmers, Black farmers, we do need to lay emphasis on the key important resource in farming, which is water. And of course, the other one is finance, the other one is know-how or technical skills, which were eroded during the time of dispossession. We need to bring that back, and that is why we're also focusing on having extension officers trained so that they can increase the experience and the knowledge level of our people. So on water specifically, as a water scarce country, as we begin to deal with the challenge that our people, just in terms of their daily lives, not having sufficient water, we also need to address the water that they should have available for farming purposes. And that is why the farming and the water regulatory process is becoming more and more favorable to those who were previously disadvantaged. And of course, it has to deal with infrastructure. The infrastructure challenge of being able to go to a water source and being able to deliver water to where our people are is the key one. And that is where financial resources become a big determinant, but the willingness and the objective to do so is there. The Department of Water and Sanitation is committed to ensuring that we address this, but so in the end are other departments. For instance, agriculture is also going to be focusing on ensuring that farming becomes an important, and as it is, an important aspect of our economic growth trajectory. And as we do so, we need to know and have a clear objective of ensuring that water, a key resource in farming, does become accessible to those farmers in the outlying areas. So as we address through water and sanitation, the whole process of giving water to our people by constructing dams and all that, we should be able to address the need that there is amongst our people in the rural areas for the delivery of water where they are, not only for living purposes, but also for commercial purposes. Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Trollip.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Honourable President, access to markets presupposes that there are commercially viable and marketable products available. The emerging agricultural sector that I worked in remains emerging, despite the targets that you've mentioned, due to the following: poorly performing comprehensive agricultural support program and its extension services, 50% underspending on the land development and support program, where hundreds of millions of rands have been lost. And this is compounded by the fact that no new dams have been built, crumbling road and rail infrastructure, the worst international ports productivity performance by our export ports, that compromises the quality and value of all perishable and livestock exports. And the banning of South African exports by neighboring countries is compounding this. What will be done differently to reverse these findings of the Auditor General that say that there is no culture shift in the department and that the legacy report of the past administration in agriculture has reported to the committee? They say nothing's changing, Honourable President.
The Honourable President.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Yes, the challenges are immense. I must admit that we face a number of challenges. The lack of support to emerging farmers has been the bane of our problems over quite a long time, and the absence of extension officers. One country that has done extremely well, as I got to know, is Ethiopia. They made it a point to train 40,000 extension officers. And having trained so many, that just revolutionized their agriculture and made agriculture a big contributor to their GDP. Now, we have been making steps or taking steps to increase the level of extension officers. But those extension officers are often young people who themselves know very little about farming. And this is where the more established farmers, commercial farmers, can play a key role in assisting the training and the preparation and capacitation of the extension officers that we need. Every farmer, particularly your emerging sector, needs extension advice on an ongoing basis. And the underspending, you're absolutely right, is something that has also bogged us down. Now, not establishing and building new dams is another challenge. And we often want to spend too much money in building dams, and yet there are new innovative ways of constructing dams more cost-effectively. It means that we need to mobilize engineers who are more attuned to new ways of building dams, because yes, you're right, it is through the trapping of water that often ends up in the sea that we will be able to increase agriculture and improve opportunities that farmers can have, emerging farmers. because quite a lot of our land lies derelict because of lack of water. And if we can, as you correctly say, build new dams, that is precisely what we can do now. Department of Land Affairs and Rural Development, as well as Agriculture, are going to be focusing on precisely these challenges that we face, and making sure that even with agreements between ourselves and our neighboring countries, we've had a challenge between South Africa and Namibia, as well as Botswana. And all those matters are now going to be negotiated so that we continue to have that access, as we would want them to have access to our own market with whatever produce that they are able to have. Because in some cases, they are saying they want to block our products so that they can increase their own capacity. They are much smaller populations, and in no time, they should be able to produce their own, and they will need a market, and we should be their market. So all these challenges, Honorable Trollip, are matters that are on our radar screen. They are matters that are going to be addressed, and I would even encourage that our parliamentary committees that are seized with matters such as these should increase the tempo of their attention so that at the government level we are able to focus on what is important. Agriculture can and will be a great job creator, and we need to focus on all those subsectors of agriculture that can be good job creators, that can lead to development and the continued entry of Black emerging farmers into agriculture, into various sectors. I should say that that is continuing to happen, but we need to hasten that pace. And you say that there hasn't been much progress. We need to hasten that, but in a number of subsectors of agriculture, it is beginning to happen. We're seeing more and more activity. And I've just been hugely impressed by seeing how many citrus farmers, how many Black farmers are now in the citrus industry. And in the citrus industry where they are actually exporting as well. In the sugar industry, we're dealing with a lot of small-scale farmers, particularly in places like KZN and Mpumalanga. So these are small-scale farmers that continue needing assistance and support. And we need to spread that more to get into grains, to get into maize. In livestock, there's a plethora of emerging Black farmers who are in livestock. So we do need to get into the other niche areas where Black farmers can participate well. Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Question number 5 has been asked by the Honourable Malema. The question is about a promise to build houses in Alexandra.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. In April 2019, I spoke to the residents of Alexandra about the challenges that they faced. I made reference to a program for the whole of South Africa to build 1 million houses. It is quite clear from the recording of what I said that these houses were not just for Alexandra. There is simply not enough space in Alexandra to be able to develop and even approach the scale that would amount to 1 million. Housing in Alexandra has long been a challenge. Many people continue to move to Alexandra due to its proximity to economic opportunities. This strains existing resources and increases housing demand. There is lack of available land for development in and around Alexandra itself. This is made worse by the land invasions and the growth of informal settlements. Under these conditions, the different spheres of government are working together to address the housing challenges in Alexandra. Plans are underway to build approximately 40,000 houses in Frankenwald and in Linksfield, benefiting the residents in the area and others in Alexandra. One of the urgent tasks is to relocate approximately 8,000 households who are in the flood lines or plains of the Jeskei River. An enumeration process to establish which household will be affected has been completed. Various land parcels have been identified for relocation. Studies on the suitability of the land have been completed on secured land portions. One project that is known as the Linksfield development has secured township proclamations for a proposed 10,000 units. The costing and engineering approvals have been obtained. Construction of social housing and open market units have also started. Another project, the Frankenwald development, is currently in the township proclamation phase, and it is projected to yield 30,000 units. The government is actively working to unblock and complete various stalled housing projects in Alexandra. Progress has been made on projects like Helen Joseph Hostel and Kwanobuhle Hostel, which with designs, approvals, and beneficiary administration processes that are underway. The City of Johannesburg has obtained an evacuation order to relocate households in flood-prone areas. Environmental assessments are underway to identify affected households, and efforts are being made to secure land for relocation. Units have been constructed in other smaller projects like the Marlborough Gardens, the Marlborough 2nd Avenue, and Madala Hostel. The specific challenges in Alexandra create a complex environment for housing development. These challenges require a multifaceted approach as well as collaboration between various stakeholders to overcome them. Now, progress is being made, and government remains committed to delivering housing solutions and improving the living conditions under which our people live in Alexandra. I thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Before I give the Honourable Malema the opportunity to do the first supplementary question, there has been a request from members in the House that please make sure that if on your devices where you listen to the interpreting, if you're not using it, please tone down the volume because we can hear the sound the whole time. That is a request from members in the chamber. So the first supplementary question will then be asked by the Honourable Malema.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I can see those guys who are working on your eyes are doing a good job because there is some improvement. President, it is leadership to admit when you have made a mistake. You can't come here and say you never promised the people of Alexandra 1 million houses. You said so. You said you are going to build 1 million houses for the people of Alexandra. And knowing you being a legally trained person, like you said, you are not an illiterate who just speaks without knowing what he's speaking about. And being a president, before you take a stage, Your back office would have given you the necessary information which is relevant to this place where you are. So it is important that today you admit that you made a mistake, because those people are dying. Some of them stayed at Stweetla, and as a result, that land is not for human settlement. And when you created that impression, a lot of expectation was made. We're dealing with human beings here who've got feelings. And when a president speaks, they've got their expectation, high, because they know it's not a lesser authority speaking. Our fighter was killed, Moshe Mpatlele, in Alexandra, fighting for people to occupy the containers, rightful people to occupy the containers. Because of that daily struggle of housing in Alex, now we've lost our honorary commissar during the battle for occupation of these containers. In his honor, and in the honor of the poorest, people who are sleeping with the rats, people who are staying in places where there is no proper sanitation and water, in their honor, I think it is a correct thing to say, I'm sorry, I've made a miscalculation, and I said 1 million houses instead of 40,000 houses. Because to say you have not said it, you are now becoming a professional politician who can just say this today and turn against it tomorrow, and it's business as usual. So,
Honourable
with
Malema,
little
you have
resource
to
left,
conclude.
with the little numbers that you have now, maybe this will help you to regain some confidence. Alexander, thank you.
The Honourable the President.
Mushavi, let me start by extending my condolences for the passing of Mpatlele. I had wanted to call you, but I then got distracted by a whole number of things. I felt very sad when that incident happened, because Mpatlele was an important leader in your party. So my condolences. In addressing precisely the point that you are making, we took care to go back to that recording and listened to it. And had a number of people in my office listening to it and interpreting it, because ke boletse ka Sepedi, ka bolela, and to the extent, Honorable Malema, that it created this impression that I said 1 million houses for Alexandra, which objectively would not be possible anyway, because we just don't have the land there to build the 1 million houses. And to the extent that it created that impression, yes, I will say I apologize for having made people believe that I meant for Alexandra. What I really meant was, yes, we would want to build 1 million houses for the whole country. And as it turned out, of course, we never really reached even that target because of a whole number of issues. We succeeded in building, during the MTSF, we succeeded in building 240,000 houses, which is way below what we had wanted. And there are many reasons around the country why we have not been able to reach our targets. And these are things that we do need to correct, because in some cases there's been underspending. Money has been laid out, and the entities that are supposed to build those houses often do not do so, and the money is returned. And the issue of Alexandra is quite complex and has been so for years. And we've had a number of initiatives that were put in place, but I do believe that, Honorable Malema, with some of the initiatives that I've spoken about, we will be able to make progress. The living conditions of our people in Alexandra are really, truly appalling. And I should say that it's not only Alexandra, it is in a number of informal settlements, which one sees as one goes around to visit our people. And you can see that they live with rats, they live where there are no facilities, and this imposes a huge responsibility on us as government to improve the living conditions of our people. This is precisely what we are committed to doing as the 7th administration, and we will work day in and day out to make sure that we give our people living conditions that are conducive to the living of human beings. So we will be focusing on that. But thank you very much for having raised the issue of the living conditions of the people of Alexandra. I take it seriously, and I'm glad that you also take it seriously. Thank you very much indeed.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Bartlett.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. The President might answer some of this question, but Honourable President, it's of paramount concern that within the 30 years of democratic governance, we have not been able to reverse the apartheid spatial legacy. Within the context of addressing rapid urbanization, Honourable President, how will our government ensure that it reverses the legacy of apartheid spatial planning to address transformation and ensure the quality of human settlements? I thank Honourable Chair.
Honourable the President.
Thank you. Honourable Deputy Speaker, thank you. It is true, something that we must admit, that we have not in the 30 years been able to change the apartheid-initiated social engineering when it comes to spatial architecture of our country. People outside and on the periphery of cities, and the richer ones live near the cities or in the cities. And this is something that we should have focused attention on to ensure that the poorer people are able to live near where they work, where there are economic facilities and infrastructure. Instead, we've just imposed more and more financial burdens on them because as they travel to where they work, they spend up to 30, 40, even 50% of their income on travel. So this is what we need to reverse. This is what we need to change, and it is a process. And it really also revolves around the powers and the ability of our local government to be able to focus on changing the spatial development of our country, to reconfigure it away from the apartheid architecture that was put in place. And by doing so, we will be able to give more economic power to our people so that they spend less time on the road going to work and more money in their pockets to be able to live a better life. And this continues to be a blight from the past of apartheid. It continues to demonstrate that the shadow of apartheid continues to cast its shade on our people. And it is something that we need to engender from national, provincial, as well as at local government level. We've often been driven by the need just to roll out houses. And having done up to 4 million, many of them are strewn right across various towns, but on the outside and periphery. And those have reinstalled the approach of the apartheid government of building dormitories, where people just go and live, and as far away as the economic centers. Reconfiguring that and reversing that is going to take quite a bit of time because we've aided and abetted what we inherited as the new government and the new dispensation. But we now need to be more focused that this is what we need to correct. And that is why making more and more social housing within cities, and now the process, and I think it will gain momentum, of reclaiming even disused buildings that are in cities and refashioning them into living abodes for our people will be the best way to go, because we will be able to bring more and more of our people in the city. And as we have seen in the recent past, and it's been going on for quite a while, our people are occupying buildings, and we often say illegal occupation, but they are doing that out of necessity. Our local governments need to be more responsive and be able to realize that we need to create social houses. We need to create accommodation in the cities rather than get our people to live far away. That, Honorable Bartlett, will then lead to the improvement of the livelihoods of our people, which I would like to see, and we are determined to proceed on that basis, our seventh administration embarking on with a great deal of commitment. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Mpiti.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. Honorable President, once again, the Department of Human Settlements has seen a baseline reduction of its budget of 3.1 billion rand for the 24-25 financial year. This, coupled with a massive housing and overcrowding crisis in Alexandra that has gone on for many, many years, as you've pointed out, Mr. President. This has led to many land invasions from desperate South Africans who have been waiting for houses for many years. Mr. President, can you please tell this House what measures will your government put in place to prevent housing developments from being illegally occupied by land invaders?
Honorable President.
The development of informal settlements, which start off as invasion of various spaces, is a problem that continues to spread around our country, which needs to be stopped and arrested. And we can only do so if our local government ensure that their laws and bylaws are adhered to. Quite often, a number of these settlements are built in very dangerous spaces. Some built right on the banks of a river, on the floodplain, as I was saying, and others built in on the outskirts of industrial areas, where quite often it leads to invasion of land that should not be invaded. Now, local government needs to ensure and enforce their own bylaws. But similarly, at the provincial level, we need to have a proper focus on the occurrences such as these, because no sooner have they started in a local area, they start spreading throughout a province. And indeed, that is one of the challenges that we face. I would say now it's being faced by many, many provinces around the country. And we do need to focus on housing or human settlements, the type of human settlements that will be able to accommodate the people who need land. Now, obviously, as you started, Honorable Member, you started with the baseline budget reduction that the human settlement has suffered from. Yes, indeed, the reprioritization process in government has led to a reduction of budgets for a number of departments, and the human settlements has also been affected. But some of it has also happened because we found that monies that are delineated for human settlements are not often spent. There have been areas where we have had money being returned. And this has been arising as a result of either land disputes, either procurement challenges, and many others, where, for instance, money is not spent in the budget time that it should be spent, and is finally returned. And some of these amount to quite a lot of money. And of course, corruption has also played a key role in all this. So the multiplicity of challenges and problems need to be addressed, and they will be addressed, because we need to focus on a program of reducing informal settlements, and also focus on reducing land invasions. Land invasions that often take place in land that is owned by other people or other state entities, and that needs to come to a stop. And focusing on that at local government, at provincial government, and indeed at national government should be the order of the day. So that too is a process that we will keep an eye on, but at the same time ensure that we do roll out housing solutions so that our people can get a better life. One of the areas, of course, that our people often raise is that they would prefer to get land, serviced land or service stands, so that they can build for themselves. And our new approach is now becoming more and more responsive to that, so that we are able to make allocations of land that is serviced, so that those who want to build will also be able to take up the opportunity. Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable President. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable F. Adams. Is the Honorable Member on the platform? Seems as if the Honorable Member is not on the platform. We'll proceed then to the last question for today that has been asked by the Honorable Hadebe. The question, Honorable Members, is about combating illicit trade and illegal substances between South Africa and Angola. The Honorable President.
Honorable House Chair, His Excellency President João Lourenço of the Republic of Angola has accepted my invitation to undertake a state visit to South Africa later this year. The objective of the visit is to further strengthen cooperation between our two countries in various areas: political, economic, security, and social areas as well. The agenda for the meeting between the two heads of state is currently being developed. It is envisaged that various ministers will assist the two heads of state in preparing for the visit. Within this context, ministers will have an opportunity to reflect on safety and security matters, including the trade and transport of illegal substances between the two countries. They would then be able to present a report and recommendations to the heads of state during President Lourenço's state visit to South Africa later this year in December. I thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable President. The Honorable Hadebe.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Your Excellency, recognizing the gravity of illicit trade and the illegal circulation of substances and the importance of regional relationship, intervention is needed to address and combat these issues effectively, with Angola being a transition country for many illicit trade activities and illegal substances, and South Africa being a key role player in these illicit activities. I would like to know whether there are any ongoing discussions regarding the enhancement of collaboration between Angola and South Africa's intelligence services to address illicit trade and illegal substance networks and the trading and the tracking of syndicates. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. I'd like to assure Honorable Hadebe that the answer is yes. We are collaborating at a deep level on a number of issues, including on matters that have to do with intelligence, to be able to focus more on these syndicates, because as you correctly say, they are there, and that process is underway. It is going to reach, as I said in my earlier head answer, it's going to reach a very important high point during the state visit, because our ministers, as I said, will be able to have processed these things and will have been able to deal with the real factual situation, which will then be underpinned by the agreements that we are going to have, that will establish a system and processes that will enable us to deal with these matters more effectively. So yes is the answer to your question. Thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable President. The next supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Galeka Mazibuko.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. The AU report on illicit financial flows concludes that the commercial activities are by far the largest contributor to illicit financial flows. Further, that lack of appropriate capacity remains a big challenge in curtailing these illicit flows. Mr. President, what is South Africa doing in strengthening the legislative and institutional capacity to deal with illicit trade? I thank you.
The Honorable President.
Honorable House Chair and Honorable Mazibuko, our National Treasury is seized with this matter on an ongoing basis, and they are focusing also on the regulatory aspect, but working together within the broad framework that has been set by the African Union as well. You may recall some years ago, former President Thabo Mbeki came out with a report that detailed how illicit criminality has been rampant in our continent and how best it can be dealt with also at the continental level. So our National Treasury, in the wake of that report and work that is being done through various structures on the continent, including in our own region, is firmly seized with this challenge and matter. It continues to preoccupy even the officials in our National Treasury. And legislation or regulations are following in tow to ensure that we deal effectively with this challenge. So be rest assured that this being an overarching challenge and problem is a matter that is being addressed. Thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable M.M. Dlamini.
Thank you, Chairperson. President, the Institute of Security Studies, but there are no coordinated efforts within the SADC region to put measures that deals with issues of security. And then that leaves the region exposed in a lot of criminal activities. So if you deal with 3 countries, let's start with Angola, one of the biggest oil-producing nations, the coast of Namibia. They've got oil deposits. Even in South Africa, we've got so much potential of oil reserves. Now, have you met with your fellow counterparts, the other president, to discuss the issues of security within the SADC region so that we can protect these resources, not only protecting them from criminal elements, but also to these foreign companies that see this continent as a continent of extraction of resources? Have you sat with them? Have you met? What are the plans? Are there plans that are going in place so that we can deal with the serious security issues? Thank you, President.
The Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Yes, there have been discussions, particularly around our natural resources, to focus on our natural resources and to establish a forum in our region which will enable us to have common approaches, common frameworks, so that when it comes to natural resources, we're able to exploit them much more effectively as a whole rather than just individually. And as you correctly say, a number of our countries are finding a number of key and important mineral resources. Namibia recently, yes, an oil find, and more searches are happening is also on our western seaboard to be able to see whether that whole plateau also has intrusions in South Africa. And that leads to cooperation and collaboration, not only focusing on criminality, but focusing also on how do we enhance our own ability to better exploit the natural endowments that we have as a region. And a forum in that regard is being put in place. And I know that our Minister of Mineral Resources, each time there's the mineral indaba, is able to collaborate with his counterparts, not only from the entire continent, but also from the region, about a number of these minerals. So there is an effort at the subcontinental level, but also more broadly at the continental level. And we've raised this at our heads of states meeting, where we have also discussed how the management of our resources can be enhanced, particularly in countries that are just new in having found these very rare minerals like rare earth and lithium and all that. So we are working on approaches that can enhance the management of the wealth that all the countries have come across and have been endowed with. So yes, that is a process that's underway. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Honorable President. And the last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Ms. L.M. Kobeni.
Thank you, House Chair. Honorable President, I think we can all agree that the time for fluff is definitely over. South Africans demand real leadership. I think the time for rhetoric is over. We've heard what you've just said, but our nation needs to be able to count on you, sir, to stand up for us, especially after we felt so neglected by previous administrations. We're all concerned about the unchecked flow of contraband goods, illicit trade, and illegal immigration that threatens our sovereignty and economic well-being. It is a fact, sir, that foreign criminal syndicates continue to thrive in South Africa, exploiting our porous borders and weak security. I want to reiterate, subsequent to the original question, reiterate my original statement that the time for fluff is over. What decisive and enforceable action will this government take to combat these threats and protect our nation? Thank you.
The Honorable President.
The South African police has gotten into top gear in as far as dealing with a number of criminal nodes and criminal activity categories. And they have established specialized teams. We've been insisting that we need specialized teams to deal with various categories of criminality. And one of those is being able to deal, yes, with illicit contraband, illicit money flows. So those specialized teams have been set up and are going to be even more and more active. Yes, you also raised the issue of illegal migration. Yes, for the longest time, we've had that as a reality. But when we set up the Border Management Agency to guard our borders, particularly where we are most vulnerable on the northern part of the country, we expected that we would see a lessening of illegal flows of people. And the performance, in many ways, is far exceeding even our expectations. The Border Management Agency was a long time in the making, and we took a bit too long to have it established, but now that it is there, it is aiding and supporting the various other agencies that we have. And we are, over time, going to see a lessening of the illegal migration that has dogged our country for the longest time. And you say, yes, we should go beyond the fluff, and that is the real action that the Border Management Agency has been able to do. We may well have spoken about it in the past, but now there's real action. The Border Management Agency is doing quite a lot, and they need to continue being supported. I was there as it was launched, and before it was even officially launched, they had already demonstrated their capability and their prowess. And already they are putting together a ring fence around the northern part of the country where we've been most vulnerable. And the police are tightening up and gearing up with regard to their specialized units. And of course, because of the activities of criminality that are so rife in our country, we need more and more specialized units. Now, for the past 3 years, we've recruited more and more police officers into the police, leading up to well over 20,000, almost 30,000. Now, over time, we'd faced a situation where the police numbers were going down and population was going up. And we were paying less attention to this challenge. We now are. And a number of those police officers are now going to be well trained to go into specialized units that are going to do specialized work, for instance, focusing on syndicates. Soon, the Minister of Police will be going around the country, focusing more on how best our police services, our security services at local government, at provincial government, and national government can cooperate and work well together, including private security. And he's now going to move around the whole country and go to those nodes that have seen greater or enhanced or increasing criminality. And I do believe that in the 7th administration, we're going to see a number of areas where changes will happen. And this has been in the making, in the preparatory processes in the 6th administration, and it's now going to reach greater fruition in the 7th administration. So your words, move beyond fluff and get more action. That is exactly what you are going to see. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. Honorable members, that concludes questions to the President. And I wish to thank the Honorable President. Honorable members, I will now request you to stand and wait for the Chair and the Mace to leave the chamber. That concludes the business for the day, and the House is adjourned.